David here with Figboot on pens, back again with another fountain pen review. Today I have for you a pen from my personal collection, which I recently picked up on a trip. It's something I have very much enjoyed, and there aren't many of these remaining, so I thought I would let you know about it in case you wanted to check them out for yourself, because they're not going to be around for much longer. The pen is a collaboration between Esterbrook and a Japanese stationer Bungubox, and the pen is called the Kachofugetsu Kingfisher. What I'm going to do today is go over the parts and features of this avian-inspired offering, talk about what I care for and what I don't care for about it. I'll show some measurements, size comparisons, and provide a writing sample. I recently took a trip to New York City. It's one of my favorite places to visit. A quick recap of the trip in under 15 seconds. My hotel was near the Empire State Building, went to a Padre game against the Mets at Citi Field, saw Oh Mary on Broadway, went to a taping of The Late Show with Seth Meyers, experienced Viola's Room, and went to an improv show at UCB. Expounding on a couple of things, Citi Field is better than Yankee Stadium. I enjoyed the interactive experience of Viola's Room, but I have notes. And Jinx Monsoon in Oh Mary was probably the most hilarious and enjoyable play I've ever seen. Just spectacular. The incredible thing Cola Escola has done is create a part in Mary Todd Lincoln where gender does not matter, race does not matter. And as the show continues, the breadth of personalities which can step into the role and have their own take on it will keep this show going for many years. One more thing I did in New York was take the ferry from Manhattan over to Brooklyn for a field trip to Yoseka Stationery. If you're ever in the city, it's well worth the trip. It's just a short walk from the ferry dock. I visited the store on my last trip to New York, but wanted to head out there again. The store is owned by Daisy and her husband Neil. Here they are with the rest of the Yoseka gang. The store isn't overly large, but it has a great selection of pens and stationery, and both times I've been there, the store has been packed, which is always nice to see. I really wasn't planning on buying anything, but then this Esterbrook caught my eye, and I just had to have it. So, in order to get a closer look at this pen that I really feel captures its theme well, please join me over here at camera 2. The pen arrives in this very cool custom box. You know how there's some companies that just are always doing things right and always come out with new and interesting things. And I think Bungubox is one of those companies that every time I've seen them come out with a new special edition, they just really have a high percentage of hitting it on the mark and hitting a home run. So it's kind of cool to see. And I like it when a custom pen comes in a custom box like this. It makes me not want to throw the box away. But inside, basically the box slips out, and we have a couple of things. There is some information about the pen, then there is a cartridge, and then since this is an Esterbrook, they include a little envelope, which is the cutest little envelope, and inside, takes some working to get it out, is essentially just a QR code to activate your pen. But I will just say that this is just the cutest little envelope there. And inside, we have the pen. And here we have the pen. This is the Esterbrook and Bungubox Estie Kachofugetsu Kingfisher. Japanese has many different compound words to capture the beauty of nature. One of them is the name of this pen, the Kachofugetsu, which literally translates to flower, bird, wind, and moon. For this pen, they chose to highlight a bird, and the bird they chose is the kingfisher. It's a migratory bird that comes to Japan every spring and then leaves in the autumn. This material is made by McKinsey Penworks. It is their diamond cast material, and it is inspired by that kingfisher. And I feel it does a real excellent job of capturing the green and blue and oranges, as well as the iridescence you see in bird feathers, which can really change colors in different light and viewing angles. This diamond cast material is actually infused with actual diamond dust as well. You can see some tiny little flakes in there, which actually helps give it some brilliant depth and shimmer and luminosity. This is a custom material, so every one of these rods are going to be unique. So let's go ahead and take a look at the parts and features of this Estie. This is what the end looks like. The end is rounded and then it just angles up. First of all, I just really like this material. This is what really got me on this pen. I am a fan of the Estie model, but this combination of the oranges and blues and just the chatoyance that's in there really struck me. So I just thought this was a striking looking pen. The trim on the pen is gold. Well, I typically prefer silver trim. I think for this particular one, it works a little bit better with the gold. Then you can see here, it is engraved with Esterbrook as well as Bungubox, and it's even in the Bungubox font. And then we have a gold band and then a rounded transition. I'd say it's a medium step down to the barrel, which begins straight and then tapers down just slightly to the end, which is slightly a little bit more pointed than the cap. The cap twists off with 1.5 rotations, and there is a spring load on the inner cap, so it does have a little bit of bounce to it. So you have to not say be careful. It's not like the pen is going to fly off, but you do have to, or the cap is going to fly off. You do have to apply just a little bit of pressure when you are when you are capping this pen, and when you're uncapping it, you just have to anticipate that. It's not overly done, and it's basically to ensure a tighter connection, a tighter fit here, so that you can make sure that the nib does not dry out. This is what the nib looks like, and you can see here that it's engraved, and we do have that number 6 nib. It's a little messy just because I have been using this pen. I guess I could have cleaned it off a little bit more, but you can tell it's being used. And that's what the plastic feed looks like. The section on the Estie is not overly long, so I do find my grip spills over to the threads here because there are some threads, and then a very minimal step up to the remainder of the barrel. But I do find that these threads are fairly smooth, and so it really doesn't bug me when my grip rests on those at all. The cap does post. It does not post extremely deeply. It's not overly heavy, so I don't feel it really backweights the pen or gives it some inordinate length, but it does give it a bit of kind of like a mushroom look that I'm not a huge fan of. For this particular pen, I find it plenty long enough to use unposted, but as I mentioned, you could use it either way. This is a cartridge converter pen. It does accept standard international cartridges, and a converter is included. And also, I wanted to show that on the converter, we have a couple of Kingfishers you can see here. And then I even have a close-up picture. I took a couple close-up pictures before I inked it up because I wasn't sure how it was going to look once it was inked up and if you could really see the Kingfishers well. And you can. So I like the fact that you can see them well even when it is inked up. Okay, this nib is available in either extra fine, fine, medium, broad, or a 1.1. I've seen this pen available in a couple of different areas. I purchased mine through Yoseka, and it was $315. And then I noticed they are still selling them through the Bungubox website or the Bungubox website, and they are approximately $380, depending on the currency conversion rate. I'm unsure about taxes and tariffs and shipping when ordering through Bungubox. It seems like nowadays those are big questions that everyone is asking, and there's a lot of uncertainty when it comes through that. Some things are getting tariffs, some things aren't. Some things are getting taxed, some things aren't. So I'm not quite sure what will happen there. But overall, I feel that this is just a stunning offering because I think it really does a good job of capturing that Kingfisher and the coloring scheme. I think that Mackenzie Penworks did an awesome job of that resin, and that I also like the Estie model here. So let's go ahead and take a look at some measurements and some size comparisons, and then we'll have a nice writing sample. So here we have some size comparisons for the Esterbrook Bungubox Estie Kachofugetsu Kingfisher. That's a mouthful. And in regard to another Estie model, which I really enjoyed, this was King of the Night, and you can see that these are still both the Estie models. This is another Esterbrook, which is a new pen, one of their latest releases, and that is called the Niblet, that I'll be reviewing here in the near future. One of the interesting things about the Niblet is that it's really tough to see here in this light, but there is only one set of threads, and so it is the same set of threads that you use when you are posting as you do capping. And you can see here that it's a smaller pocket pen, but it's an interesting offering that we'll be taking a look at here in a couple of weeks. And then in regard to one more Esterbrook, that this is their Raven, and this is in the oversize. So you can see the size difference between the oversize Estie and then the standard Estie. In regard to some non-Esterbrook pens, here we have a Montegrappa Elmo, and this is the Chrysiocola. And then we have a TWSBI VAX 700 Iris. And then finally, we have a Lamy Safari. Then in regard to uncapped comparisons, here it is with the Estie Oversize, and then the Montegrappa Elmo, and then finally, here's the Lamy Safari. Here we go with the writing sample for the Esterbrook. This is going to be a long name. And this is the Esterbrook plus Bungubox. And this is the Estie. And then we'll go down here. This is the Kachofugetsu, which is spelled Kachofugetsu. And then Kingfisher. I won't spell that out. This is a broad stainless steel nib. And the ink I'm using is probably the very first thing I ever purchased from Bungubox, which was an ink that was, every once in a while there gets to be like a really popular ink that is kind of the ink of the moment. And for a while, this was one of the ink of the moments a number of years ago, and that is Bungubox 4B. This is what the ink looks like. This is a really nice blue-black. When I first started with fountain pens and getting into ink, I really only used black ink. And then I got really crazy and I started branching out to blue blacks. And this was one of the first blue blacks that I ever picked up. And it was very popular at the time, and it's still a solid ink that I really much enjoy. This is what it looks like with Diamide Midnight, which is another kind of more bluer blue-black. And then here it is with Pelikan Edelstein Tanzanite. This is what the bottles looked like at the time. I really despise these bottles. I really end up, a lot of times, ending up decanting them and putting them in someplace else. I just really don't like the design of these bottles because it makes it really hard to get the ink out of here. I won't go into a long dissertation about the little insert that's in here. A lot of times I end up taking it out, but while I am a huge fan of the ink, I am not a fan of these bottles. Okay, here we go with the rest of the writing sample. As you can see, this is very much a broad nib. You can actually get a little bit of line variation out of here. But this is a very wet and juicy nib. It's laying out a fair amount of ink here. In regard to reverse writing, it's actually fairly smooth and lays down a nice medium line. And then in regard to some fast writing, it's decently smooth, but just has a hint of feedback. So it's just very, very pleasant. And the feed keeps up nicely. So there we have the Esterbrook Bungubox Estie Kachofugetsu Kingfisher. This is just one of those pens that is soon, like I said, I walked into the store and I didn't have an intention on purchasing anything, but then as soon as I saw this in the light, I just had to have it. This material to me was striking, and I liked the inspiration behind it, and that it was just something that I enjoyed, and that I enjoy this broad nib as well, that is very pleasant to write with. So I'll put a link in the notes below where you can check it out on both the Bungubox site as well as Yoseka. And until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.